The world of Runeterra is massive, and its history is just as large. In this series, I'm going to help you learn about its entire history, from the beginning when there was nothing to modern day. So buckle in, hit that subscribe button, and let's get right into it. As the many new nations began to settle in their respecting corners of Runeterra, one nation, developing its magics through the assistance of the aspects themselves, would reach a level of near godlike power that would endure for millennia to come. As the Sun Empire rose to prominence, the old city of Neremazeth would be the capital of Shurima. It was here that the sun worshippers made the first iteration of a sun disk. Guided by the divine aspects of Targon, in preparation for some unknown future war, these ancient Shurimans would use the sun disk to undergo a transformative ritual, giving them extraordinary power and a long life so they could safeguard their nation and its interests. These noble ascended, also known as Sunborn, were worshipped as living gods and would help to form the great Shuriman Empire. The warrior queen Sataka would become one of the very first ascended, wielding the gifted Kalikar, a weapon brought from beyond the mountain and raised aloft at Shurima's birth. It was said that entire war campaigns could be won the moment a god warrior took to the battlefield, because their foes chose to turn and flee rather than face them directly. These ascended would lead the great empire into a millennia of strength and growth. The ascension ritual would usually be decided upon by the sun priests through criteria that are mystical and governed by ritual and superstition, and usually it's granted to those who have selflessly served Shurima and are being given the chance to do so even after what would normally be their time to die. The process of ascension, though, was not a perfect science. While sometimes the ascension would raise strong, near-perfect god warriors, other times it could fail altogether, killing the host. Usually, it'd be somewhere in between. After one failed ascension, the sun disk of Neremazeth would be destroyed. The Shurimans, not being a culture to give up easily, would build a larger and more powerful sun disk in the current Shuriman capital, likely with the help of Ishtali mages. After its construction, an oasis would appear inside of the structure. Its life-giving water would pour into the surrounding area, giving life to the desert, later on creating a large and sprawling river system, named the Mother of Life River. It was around this time that Shurima would name its first emperor, and the empire would end up absorbing a great deal of nations and cities as vassal states, some of these including Ishtal and Osha-Vazan. Eventually, the Shuriman emperor would set his eyes to the south and the great nation of Akathia. Despite the Mage King's call for a peaceful coexistence, Akathia would eventually be subjugated by the Shuriman Empire and their ascended. After conquering Akathia, the Shuriman Empire would begin abolishing of worship of other deities other than their own ascended, marking the others as false idols. Hundreds of years later, the Council of Akathia would submit countless petitions to the Shuriman Emperor, asking for some of its own most notable and noble citizens to be granted the gift of ascension and gaining the vassal state of Akathia, some say in the empire that had consumed them years before. All of these petitions would be denied or ignored. Hostilities and anger towards Shurima would grow with each failed petition, often denied without any explanation. The Akathian leadership would in turn attempt to seek independence from the Shuriman Empire, seeking allies in Ishtal and other neighboring states. All fearing the power of Shurima and its ascended would decline such an alliance. Being pushed into a corner by the tight grip of the Shuriman Empire, Akathia would make a desperate attempt to secede. Not long after a large earthquake hit the lands of Akathia, a group of mages would find an unearthed void rift. These mages would seek to utilize this discovery in Akathia's push for independence, voting to weaponize it against their oppressors. The Council of Akathia, as a message of independence from the Shuriman Empire, would crown a new Mage King and re-establish the Kahari Order, the Mage King's personal guard. Loyal citizens of Shurima would either be killed or banished from Akathia. Akathian citizens would loot and pillage Shuriman homes and settlements within Akathian territories. In a response to this uprising, the Shuriman Emperor would send in a group of Shuriman Ascended possibly led by Sataka herself, a massive Shuriman army would find itself at Akathia's door. In an attempt to use the Void Rift against their adversaries, the Council of Akathia accidentally opened an even larger Void Rift, causing countless Voidborn to seep into the physical realm and ultimately tainting the land itself. A massive battle between the Voidborn and the Ascended would ensue. Some of these Ascended would even die in battle, such as Sataka. Nazook, a god warrior of Ishtal, went to the Shuriman Emperor and pledged to create a weapon that would be powerful enough to stop the Void, eventually creating a floating fortress of living stone maintained by the greatest mages and Ishtali god warriors. Bringing the super weapon to Akathia, they would fight the Void. After weeks of endless battles, the giant monolith would eventually fall, much of the fortress being lost into the gaping maw that had been created, vanishing into a silent nothingness below. Wishing to preserve their nation from losing any more to the growing threat of the Void, Ishtal mages would grow the wilderness around them like a shield, isolating Ishoakan from the rest of the world. In a desperate attempt to stop the Void, the Netherblade would be created and wielded by Horok, an ascended warrior who would then delve deep into the underground void tunnels, attacking the rifts at their core and eventually turning the tide of the battle. Shabaka and Shabak, ascended twins with the heads of ravens, would eventually help seal the Great Rift of Akathia, ultimately halting the spread of the Void. Having halted the spread of the Void and losing its allies in Ishtal, the Shuriman Empire would attempt to rebuild and ultimately fall after the Great Void War. And there you have it, episode 4 of the complete history of Runeterra. As always, if you got this far and you're not already subscribed, please hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with future episodes. I've also been notified in some of my comments that even just subscribing isn't showing people the new episodes, so make sure you hit the bell too as well, and I will see you all in the next one.